I'm still looking at your hat.
Good. It's working. It's working.
It's working. What's going on, Garland?
That's what people got to
Anyways,
ask.
um, look, the last time I checked, the final, I think the Senate's still up for grabs. But either way, and the House has gone Republican,
Mhm.
but it wasn't the red wave everybody was talking about. It was the elections were a lot more were a lot tighter, and the reason is domestic politics. While the economy was appeared to be one of the highest concerns for Republican voters, abortion was led the way for many Democrats and also a few independents.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what we're seeing. Even though Joe Biden's popularity rating has dropped below 40%, and so this wasn't an election that sought to um, give him any sort of mandate. I think that there was concern amongst many voters about what would happen if the Republicans were given unfettered control of Congress. And there's also, I think, a lot of concern about Donald Trump and his engagement in Republican politics. A lot of Republicans are nervous about this. The Democrats definitely don't like it, and many independents are conflicted. And the reason why I bring up all this domestic stuff is to point out that that's the driver. There's a lot of people out there that are like, man, if the Republicans come in, they're going to cut off aid for Ukraine. It's all over for Zelensky. Nope. First of all, the Republicans are just as Russophobic, or even more so, than many Democrats. Lindsey Graham, a Republican, has famously gone out and said, this is a war that'll be fought to the last Ukrainian. And he sort of tickled pink about that. So, whereas the Republicans might, because of economic pressures, shouldn't make those voices because it damages my throat, be reticent to the unrestricted flow of U.S. taxpayer money to Ukraine. They're not going to stop this policy. The Republicans are as much in favor of supporting Ukraine as the Democrats are, and anybody hoping for a major change in policy, I think, will be disappointed.
I'll say this about that, Scott. I think that you hit on something really big at the end because I think the Republicans could have had the red wave that they wanted. Now, don't get me wrong. If they even squeak by and get control of both houses, they'll have a lot of power. But my point is, the fact of the matter is the neocon aggressive militaristic foreign policy that shuns diplomacy is U.S. foreign policy. So the Republicans could have wiped the floor with them. But when you look back and you see, like, they had this, basically, I call it the war with China bill. They had this bill where they're like, we're going to arm Taiwan. We're going to recognize Taiwan independence and all this kind of stuff. It passed 100-0, right? The same things that the neocon stuff that could have, I made a statement, when I was talking about this, I said, I'm a lefty, I'm to the left of the Democratic Party, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm pretty unabashed about my politics. I said, however, if in Maryland, there was somebody running and there was a Republican and a Democrat, and I don't agree with the Republicans on anything, but if the Republican said, you vote for me, I will do everything I can to end any possibility of war with China and Russia, I'd have voted for him because that was such a priority. And that person would have look at J.D. Vance, you know what I mean? The people that would do that, if the Republican Party as a whole had done that, I think they would have had the red wave. But the fact of the matter is, they're funded by and controlled by the same lobbyists and Lockheed Martins and all that stuff. So they can only kind of do a wink and a head nod. Yeah, we'll do something different with Ukraine. Wink, wink, wink. But we're not really. And so again, they didn't get the red wave that they wanted because both parties are beholden to these military industrial complex, banks, etc.
I agree. Look, I'll just put it this way. I think there's more likelihood that the House of Representatives will impeach Joe Biden over nothing.
Yeah,
Um,
something to do with China. It'll be something to do with China.
Yeah, but it won't. But they won't. I think so. You're right. But they won't. They'll do that before they change any major way our policy towards Ukraine, which
Now,
shows you how politics is taken over.
Exactly. Now, let's go to the battlefield. What's happening? We're hearing about, I'm hearing there was a planned Kherson offensive. I've heard that it has flopped. Although I think like this, man, they're rushing hundreds of thousands of men and tanks to the battlefield. I think the days of these offensives hitting the Russian lines and finding a weak spot, I don't think that's going to work anymore. But what's happening? Tell me, Scott.
Well, I mean, if I get on Telegram and start scrolling through the various channels, Russia's surrendering Kherson. There's a secret deal. Putin's going to give a speech tonight announcing the surrender of Kherson. Russia's desperate, looking for a way out. All this. I say, okay, that's all fascinating, but then you put it aside and you say, okay, let's look at the battlefield, because in order for that any of that to be true, I'd expect to see, major Russian defeats on the battlefield. But everything, without exception, everything shows the Ukrainians, pressing the attack on a number of locations and being defeated everywhere. They're unable to penetrate in a meaningful fashion the consolidated Russian defenses. The Russians are bringing to bear their superiority in artillery and air power, luring the Ukrainians into these kill boxes and then literally killing them. On the one or two occasions where the Ukrainians achieved a breakthrough, the Russians responded doctrinally, which is pinching off the base of the breakthrough and then counterattacking with reserves and slaughtering the Ukrainians. So I look at that and I say, well, it sounds to me like the Russians are holding. Why would Russia then turn around and just surrender Kherson? And there's all this speculation out there about, somehow people have breathed life into the notion that Jake Sullivan got on the phone with his counterpart and threatened him that NATO and the United States will deploy 90,000 troops to Odessa if Russia dares launch an offensive. And I'm like, what planet do you live on to believe such nonsense? It's absurd in the extreme. This is all derived, of course, from General Petraeus's absurdity about the coalition of the willing. Again, I don't know how much money was in the briefcase that was handed to Petraeus by someone who said, hey, could you run this up the flagpole and see what kind of result we get? Part of the disinformation campaign to get the Russians to second guess. And like I said, maybe there will be an announcement by Putin tonight. And if that happens, I'll be the first one to go, what the hell is going on here? But I don't think there's going to be that announcement. I don't think the Russians they're doing everything the Russians are doing indicates not only their willingness and desire to hold fast to what they have, but their preparation for an eventual counterattack, which will continue their offensive for very decisive outcomes. So you don't do this. Russia has been working overtime to try and win back the trust of a segment of Russian population that became a little disheartened by the inadequacies of the partial mobilization. I think people expected more of Russia. They didn't expect to find entire regions having had corrupt military commissars who, instead of stockpiling hundreds of thousands of sets of equipment for distribution to mobilize soldiers, sold it on the black market, so that when they finally mobilized soldiers and they showed up, they didn't have anything there. And so they had to bring it in from elsewhere. And people are going, hey, that's bad. That's not good. Well, Putin's saying, I agree. That's bad. That's not good. Commission, fix it. And so they're trying to fix it. And I think they're succeeding. I think people are starting to go, okay, all right, we got the leader back in charge, and he's making things happen. People who failed are being held to account. And then what? Putin's just going to slice his own throat by saying, the heck with it, I'm out of Kherson. I don't see it. The Constitution forbids this. I think it's Article 64. How could Russia possibly think of just giving up parts of Russia? It's an absurdity. But again, I'm sitting here thousands of miles away in the comfort of my home, looking at things. I'm not in the inner circle of Vladimir Putin. I don't know what they're talking about, and who knows what deals are going to be. But I would just say that if Putin was looking to weaken himself politically, um, then giving up Kherson without a fight would be the best way to go about doing it. So, and I don't think Putin's in the business of deliberately weakening himself.
It seems to me also that they're taking advantage of something politically, and that is that the other side always needs wins. Because I'm looking at the Hungarian foreign minister being interviewed the other day, and he's basically like, we need out of this. This is not good for us. This is hurting us. I'm looking at now Macron and some other people saying, hey, man, this Inflation Reduction Act is going to hurt us. We don't like it. You know what I mean? I'm seeing pushback growing, like European leaders saying, man, we got angry people. We got to look like we got a spine. So I see the fracturing. It seems more to me that the new the general here is saying, we're going to dig in. We're going to protect everything we got. We're going to prepare so that when the time is most advantageous to us, be it weather, politically, military, when we see, okay, this is the right opportunity, we're going to make some moves. It may be a big offensive, it may be a series of offensives, but we're acting on our timeline. And it seems to me they're digging in and take advantage of their advantages, both militarily as the weather changes, but also politically as the political weather is, as the ground is shifting underneath of these guys. The fact that the U.S. has to keep leaking these stories, Jake Sullivan's talking to this guy. Now there's another one, Zelensky. They're telling Zelensky, hey, maybe you better talk. The fact that these stories are being leaked says there's water coming in. They got a leak below the water line, and they're trying to plug these leaks. And I don't think the Russians are going to give them an out by making a move that they don't have to make.
I agree. I mean, one of the problems that people like you and I face is that the Russians have not been good at the information warfare game. And as a result, we have the U.S. Ukrainian NATO machine out there spinning, putting stories out there, spinning things, getting things going, causing confusion, deliberately designed to. I mean, man, I can't log in the morning to my AOL account without being flooded. I mean, literally, I'm just sitting here going, what? Kherson surrendered? Putin has cancer? Oh, God, the world's, oh, man, it's so bad for the Russians. Then I click each story, and it's like, oh, there's no sourcing. There's nothing here. It's garbage, spin, etc. But that's the first thing I get in the morning. Then I turn to, Telegram. Oh, good Lord, they're surrendering Kherson. I mean, I'm boom, boom, boom. The only time I see anything, I click on the Ministry of Defense site. Yeah, we're sort of killing Ukrainians everywhere they come up. We're not too worried about it. There's no panic in my voice. Nothing bad is happening. Let's move on. Now, I know that that's not totally true, because I know the reality of war is that certainly there's some place on the battlefield that something bad is happening. We know that there's a couple battles where the Russians have taken casualties. Again, I remind everybody that if you put a couple hundred guys in an area that has been designated as a kill zone by enemy artillery, and they're given the opportunity to fire into that kill zone while you're there, you will die. It's just the way of the world. Just because you're a Russian doesn't mean you're immune to the lethal impact of shrapnel tearing off your skull. So I think the Russians have suffered casualties, and they continue to suffer casualties. That's just the way war is. It doesn't mean Russia's losing. It just means that this is war, and the Russians are fighting a very capable opponent, one who has been beefed up with not only tens of billions of dollars worth of advanced weaponry, but also reinforced by thousands of mercenaries, tens of thousands of Polish sheep-dipped troops. So, this is a fight. It's a fight, but there, Douglas McGregor, I have to cite him because I'm stealing something. I liked it. I listened to him the other day. Talk about the Battle of Tobruk, a string of British defeats in North Africa. And Churchill was asked, because you're losing all the battles, does this mean you're losing the war? And Churchill said, no. Battles mean nothing. What is important is momentum. Mm-hmm. And the momentum is on the side of Russia. If you take a look at it, everything that's happening right now is on the side of Russia. There is it's reverse momentum happening for the Ukrainians. They're losing too many men. They're not getting enough reinforcements. There's Ukraine fatigue in the West. Europe is falling apart. The European Union just came out and said, hey, remember that €9 billion that we promised you? Well, you're not going to get all of it because we don't have any to give you. And it's going to get worse for Ukraine as the economies of Europe continue to collapse. So the momentum is with Russia. Ukraine's got nothing going for it. And that's why I don't believe half the garbage that I'm